Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Let's dive in today and talk about a topic that you may or may not have discussed or talked about much, and that's data security and encryption, which are at the heart of our security operations we do today. If you remember nothing else from this talk, remember this: data has a life cycle, and your security controls need to match where the data is and how it's being used. As we've discussed numerous times, breaches today continue to show that organizations don't just fail because they lack tools. They fail because data was left exposed at rest, in transit, or even in use, or because logging and monitoring didn't catch the misuse fast enough. So that leads us into understanding data lifecycles. That's the creation, storage, use, or processing, sharing or transmission, the archiving, and then destruction. Data is born when it's generated or captured, then stored either in a database, inside of the files, your cloud buckets, or even your logs. Later, it's used by systems or individuals. It's shared internally or externally. It's archived for legal or compliance reasons, and eventually destroyed when it's no longer needed. The key point is that security is not a single event. It's a set of decisions that must follow the data from start to finish. A recent lesson from public cloud incidents is that organizations often secure the production system, but forget about old backups, their archived exports, or test copies of the same data, which is just as sensitive. So we've talked about it a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more. There's different states with your data. It can either be at rest, it can be in motion, or in use. Data at rest is stored on disk, in cloud storage, or in your backups. Data in motion is moving between or across your network, such as through HTTPS or through your VPN. Data in use is actively in memory while the system is processing it. Each state needs different protections. At rest, we must use encryption, access controls, multi-factor authentication, and disk encryption. When the data is in motion, we should use TLS 1.2 or 1.3. Make sure that we're using IPsec and we're securing the APIs and certificates that we're using. When it's in use, we rely on our endpoint protections. We rely on memory isolation, and we rely on zero trust practices and accesses. Think about many breaches, which we've heard about, involved exposed cloud buckets and secure file transfers, or a leaked API token. It shows how attackers look for the weakest state of our data protections, rather than our strongest. Next is we have to do data classification. Labeling is not fun, retention is hard, and destruction may or may not happen inside of your organization. Not all data is equally sensitive. So organizations classify data into categories, such as public, internal, confidential, restricted, or even regulated. Classifications help us determine how the data should be labeled, shared, stored, and when it should be destroyed. Labels and metadata tags prevent accidental sharing, especially in email, cloud drives, or in our collaboration tools. In many organizations, automated sensitive labels now help you and I avoid mistakes before they happen. Retention means keeping data only as long as it's needed for legal, academic, financial, or operational reasons, that is. Destruction means we securely wipe, shred, or crypto shred the data once the retention is over. Excuse me. Think about privacy enforcement actions and breach investigations that you may have been a part of. They all have one thing that's very clear. Keeping data longer than necessary increases both legal exposure and your breach impact. So let's talk about logging and monitoring. For those familiar with security operations, these are two things that we, inside of a SOC or in security, rely on heavily. Because without logging and monitoring, we can't see it, so we can't protect it. I'll say that again, without logging and monitoring, you're blind. You don't know what you're protecting. So it's important that we look at logs, that we capture authentication attempts, privilege changes, file integrity events, system configuration changes. any network anomalies, as well as our applications and API logs. Think about ingress monitoring in this way. It helps track what enters your environment. This can come from your firewall, your web app firewall logs. This can be any suspicious inbound connections from your cloud. This could be brute force attempts on your portal, your login, or the traffic from known bad IP regions, think nation states or unsanctioned countries. Egress monitoring tracks what's leaving your environment. This could be large outbound transfers. Did someone just upload several gigs of files? Was there unauthorized uploads? Did Fleetus, in this case, decide he was done and he wanted to export all of his context, all of his code, and put it in his personal repos? Do you see DNS tunneling? This is likely unusual traffic or unusual port usage show up. This is where DLP, known as data loss prevention, becomes especially important. Again, think through attacks where we see that the attack was visible in the logs before the organization realized, which is why monitoring and alert review are such critical operation tasks. But Fleetus, I get millions, if not billions of events every day. Yes, and that's why we have tools such as your SOAR, which is your security orchestration automation. You have other content engineering built by your detection engineers to help take those millions, funnel it down to tens of thousands, and hopefully just to tens or 20s of alerts that you're processing. I digress a little. But it's important we also think about the encryption fundamentals. You likely are using encryption every single day and don't think about it, which is one of the most important controls we can use to protect our data. The first one I want to talk about is symmetric encryption. This uses one shared key. It's fast, it's ideal for large amounts of data, and likely you're going to see AES 256 as a common example. You may even now see AES 512 as the number is your key length here. The next is asymmetric encryption. This uses the public-private key pair and is used for trust, signing, and key exchange. This is where RSA and ECC are common examples. Think of symmetric encryption as the warehouse and asymmetric encryption as the trust builder. In modern systems, we often use both together. One is to secure the data efficiently or effectively. The other is to establish the secure relationship and then exchange the keys. Exposed services and unencrypted APIs have shown that if traffic or credentials are not protected properly, attackers can and will intercept or reuse them very quickly. Think man-in-the-middle attacks. If you've been in an application security class, you've probably heard the analogy of Borrowed Alice and Evil Eve. So where encryption is actually used, it's used everywhere. I've already mentioned it. It's used in HTTPS, your TLS. It's used in your VPN tunnels. It's used in disk encryption, inside of your password managers, your digital signatures, and key exchanges for the certificates we build during our PKI. So this is why a modern online service should not just have encryption. It should use it consistently across the entire data flow. If a company encrypts the database but leaves its backups, logs, or API traffic exposed, the protection is incomplete. Think about your cloud and SaaS incidents. They've demonstrated that attackers will target the weakest link, whether that's your backup repo, a misconfigured certification, think a wildcard cert, or an overloaded API connection. We'll go a little bit deeper now. Let's talk about hashing and password protection. Hashing is a one-way function. It's used for integrity and password storage. It can't be reversed. That's why an algorithm such as SHA-256, bcrypt are useful in security operations. Passwords should be long passphrases, ideally 14, 16, 20 characters or more longer. And users should not reuse passwords across their accounts, especially their personal accounts should not be used in the corporate world or their corporate passwords used at home. Password managers are strongly preferred, and forced password rotation is no longer recommended unless there's an evidence of compromise. I will say it's always better safe than sorry to reset a password if you believe it's been part of a breach notification, especially if you're reusing it or sharing it with your roommate, your spouse, or your kids. Recent credential stuffing attacks are a reminder that reused passwords remain one of the easiest ways for an attacker to get in, even when our technology stack is otherwise strong, which leads us into why MFA is a best practice. MFA is the next critical layer after our passwords. The strongest options are passkeys or FIDO2, followed by an app-based one-time password code, then SMS, and finally an email, MFA, as the weakest option. This matters because not all MFA is equally resistant to phishing and account takeovers. Phishing campaigns have increasingly targeted one-time codes or SMS verification, which is why many organizations are moving towards passkey or hardware-backed FIDO keys, or passkeys, if you've heard them or think of your FIDO key. So why does this all matter with inside of security and security operations? Security operations teams use these concepts every day to answer simple but important questions, such as where is my data? What state is it in? Who has access to it? Will we know, or how do we know if it's been altered or stolen? Can we prove what happened after the fact? When a breach occurs, the first questions are usually about logs, encryption coverage, sensitive data exposure, and whether the organization can tell the difference between normal activity and suspicious activity. This is why data classification, logging, encryption, and identity protection all belong together with inside of your security ops. So let's explore the topic deeper, and I challenge each of you to explore it deeper. If you want to go deeper, start by looking at how the data lifecycle appears in your own environment. Is that if you're a student in class, when you're at work, or even on your personal devices? Ask yourself, what data do I create? Where do I store it? How do I share it? Is it archived? And when do I delete it? Which of my files should be classified as confidential or restricted? Do you know where your backups live and whether they're encrypted? What logs exist for my device, my applications, or my cloud services? And who reviews them? You can also explore standards and guidance like NIST data sanitation guidelines, the modern password guidance, or current recommendations for passkeys and MFA. Try reading a real breach post-mortem and then identify where the data was exposed. Was it at rest? Was it in motion? Or was it in use? This simple exercise can make this talk much more real for you. You're going to apply this in all aspects of your life. So think about it both. Let's just start with your career. From a career perspective, I hope this connects to the roles within inside of security operations, cloud security, GRC, incident response, or even your identity and access management. If you work in a SOC, you'll need to know which logs matter and how to spot data exfiltration or credential abuse. If you work in cloud security, you'll need to know how to protect data across your storage, your network, and your application layers. If you go into GRC, you'll need to know how data retention, classification, and encryption support compliance. Inside your personal life, the same ideas still apply. Use a password manager, enable strong MFA, keep your devices updated, encrypt sensitive files if possible, and think before sharing links or files to cloud services or email. You can even apply data lifecycle to your own digital cleanup. Delete what no longer is needed. Archive what matters. Protect the files that contain your personal information, your financials, or any academic information. So the main idea from this lecture today is simple. Data security is not just about locking down files. It's about managing the full lifecycle of data, choosing the right controls for each state, and using encryption and logging to identify protection. Together, if you understand that, you are already thinking like a security professional. So I hope you enjoyed today's lecture. Remember, please reach out with any questions. Let me know if you found this topic helpful. If there's something you want to dive deeper into, just reach out. Happy to answer questions. So as always, I hope everyone stays safe and stay secure, and come back again to learn more about how security applies to our daily lives and professionally.